One's curiosity can turn into one's obsession. The desire to learn and decipher Dark Tithe is an idea that has lingered in many. To channel Ardorian spells to create dark and vile creatures to serve its summoner. While many brave the dark to fight the creatures that dwell within it, necromancers are the ones that create these dark-dwelling horrors and release them unto the world. Whether they do so out of morbid fascination or are morally corrupt, their goals eventually intertwine, as it no longer matters whether they meant good or not. Many cultures either discourage or completely outlaw the usage of darker arts, refusing their false promises of power and to keep the land pure. However, this does not stop those seeking greatness. These titular witches and warlocks who seek to empower themselves by making deals with more darker beings prowl in the most desolate of lands. A cowled figure stalks through the desert, with the sky above them as dark as their robes. While many travelers who seek passage through the Sea of Dust would carry supplies, they seem to only hold a darkened grimoire. An ichorous liquid seemed to seep from the cursed tome as it made small droplets within the sand, leaving a sort of trail of crumbs behind the traveler. Journeying through the desert mountains, they reached what seemed to be a colossal church before them, though there were no bells, only a brazier high above, lit with a sickening purple fire. They moved onwards and had scurried past the large stone doors. Within the church laid old statues, cobwebs, and a figure slouched against the wall. He had been tucked in between the shadows of the church. The mage bowed before the sitting figure and requested to learn more about the dead. The purple creature smiled at him with a toothy grin and nodded to the request. The hermit, known as Garnef, was one of the last remaining priests of Ardor, and had held a special connection with the church, explaining why he remained within it, while the rest were absent. Many of the Ardorian priests had been hunted and killed by various individuals, diminishing their numbers to small amounts, leaving the occultists to remain in their wake. The Dark Mage had learned the basics to necromancy, to create, to capture, and to make use of their undead. They could now be titled as a Necromancer. As a necromancer, they would dedicate their days to experimentation. What a necromancer's motives may be differs from person to person. However, all share the same themes of desiring to experiment on others to create more potent and powerful undead. When a necromancer is taught how to do tithe with ardor, they are able to use undead called shriekers. Shriekers are creatures that stem from Ardorian origin and are essentially stitched together undead. The spell in Fury causes the affected to rapidly change, altering their form into these stitched undead. Alone, shriekers pose a minimal threat. However, if they are in a large group, even the greatest warriors can fall to them. Every time a shrieker strikes at an individual, their physical form withers with each hit. However, a well-timed Ignis spell can decimate their numbers. The Necromancer took their work into the tundra, where they could commence with their experiments without any sort of intervention by authorities. Necromancers are among the few in the world that would help one another, as they are all outcasts from society and obtain power from the same god. An exception to this is if they live as hermits. Throughout their career in studying, necromancers may do a variety of things, such as experimentation with their undead, banditry, or even move on to larger things, such as attacking whole regions with their undead by simply letting them wander. A powerful necromancer could fill an entire forest with shriekers to prevent anyone from traversing it. With their new spells, they traveled throughout the land, seeking prime targets to turn into shriekers. At first, they only went after criminals and the like, a way to put some sort of ease on their conscience. Unfortunately, over time, they deviated away from this code of ethics and instead began to attack anyone they had come across. It was more of the matter of desperation to obtain more shriekers rather than bloodlust. Many of their experiments had them attempt to create a larger shrieker, one that was made up of multiple bodies stitched together. However, they weren't able to properly create it, as the shriekers would simply writhe in place, almost like they each attempted to move in a separate direction. As a result, they decided to continue improving upon what they already were taught. They need to improve before moving on to more advanced concepts. Once the necromancer has reached a high enough skill in the art, they will seek out further teachings. Near the southern end of the tundra lies an old church, one of the Prince of Cures, that now lies in ruin, occupied by seemingly no one. When entering these ruins, one will see two things: a sinister mirror standing opposite to them, and a figure to their left. This shadowy individual is named Charles, and they act as an unofficial instructor to the most ambitious of necromancers, teaching those who have managed to become adept at their necromancy. The fellow Ardorian occultist taught the necromancer more ways to practice tithe with ardor. Some of these spells include summoning a blade of curses, creating a howler, or the ability to siphon the very life force of an individual. However, he is not a charitable fellow, as he will require something of the necromancer, and that is a few of their shriekers. As it has been said before, necromancers have an affinity with experimenting, and Charles is no different. Being able to obtain a few shriekers to teach an acolyte was an easy way to obtain a few more undead. Finally, they had become a master necromancer upon the conclusion of Charles's teachings. As a master necromancer, they have become a herald for the various monsters that roam Gaia, a herder of howlers, a swarmer of shriekers. Master necromancers are among the most unique of personalities. Some may be a bit more unstable than others, while some may not even be inherently evil. It could even relate to why they sought necromancy. Perhaps one truly was evil and sought to bring the world to its knees. Maybe another wished to bring back a loved one to life. The necromancers simply have spells that distort the natural order of life and death. As necromancers had become more abundant in the world, they had obtained a more slang name, this name being Lich Mage. This came from a rumor that necromancers were so in touch with the dead that they themselves were among the dead too. Among the rest, our necromancer seeks to simply know more, whether they are to master the art of summoning beasts of burden, or they are to have their soul be riddled with worms. It is up to them whether they can see the truth or fall into the heart of darkness.